And so what he's doing now is going, well, look, this is the world we live in. I'm going to do what's best for my country. And I think that's what you're seeing.
Is there a risk with this strategy?
Of course. There's a risk with every strategy. Of course there's a risk with this strategy. The big risk inevitably with this strategy, and I think, as I talked about in my book, the West becoming weaker and emboldening our enemies, which is what we have done for a long time now, is creating an environment where we are opening ourselves up to challenge from other forces. Russia invading Ukraine was not an accident. It was not an accident. It was a consequence of the fact that Putin and other people in his leadership team felt this was the moment to test the waters. Can we now do the things we've always wanted to do?
And they felt they could do that under Biden, in your view?
Yes. But see, I wouldn't personalize it down to that level. I think far too many people get carried away with, Republican, Democrat, left, right, Biden, Trump. It's an ongoing process that's been going on for decades. And the culmination of it was first the invasion of Ukraine, then October 7th. October 7th was not an accident either. Hamas, backed by Iran, felt that this was their moment to act because, again, is the West going to be able to respond morally, militarily, and in other ways powerfully to that? They felt that they were able to test it. The fact that China now is openly talking about taking Taiwan is, again, another symptom of this same thing. So the risk is there. And, of course, the risk as well is that the crumbling Western alliance, we can talk about the reasons for it. I think it's really important too, particularly we're recording this in Britain and in Europe more broadly. I think that's an important conversation. The Western alliance is falling apart, and that is always going to be a risk. It's a particularly big risk for Europe, I feel.
How much of this, and before we go into the details and just catch up on a few things you said there, how much of this is linked to nuclear weapons? Because I was thinking, I can't really, all of these superpowers are going for countries that aren't armed with nuclear weapons. And it somewhat feels to me that the reason why the US wouldn't get involved if China took Taiwan is because they have nukes. And the reason why the US is a little bit intimidated by Russia is because they have nukes. So is it really the world is splitting into nuclear powers and anyone with nukes can do what the fuck they want because they can basically wipe out planet Earth if they get angry?
And that has always been the case, except we've been constrained by the framework of the rules-based order. But that got taken apart. And this is where I think the West and the United States including needs to take responsibility, because the war in Afghanistan and Iraq even more so completely undermined our moral credibility. How can you say, well, Russia isn't allowed to invade Ukraine if you go around invading countries on a whim, making up excuses and reasons to do that? So we have eroded our moral authority, and we've also eroded our military strength and the potential that we have to inflict damage on people who misbehave, so to speak. So both of those things have come together.
It seems so crazy to me that in my lifetime, I'm seeing, because it's really never happened in the 33 years that I've been alive, I'm hearing a US president talk about kidnapping another president and then going in and taking the oil. And then, do you know what? We might take Greenland as well. We might have that big country over there as well, even though it belongs to a NATO ally in Denmark. It feels like something has fundamentally changed.
It has.
And I'm scared of the precedents this is going to set, because do we then all just get to start taking countries we want? Well,
this is what happens when there is a shifting of the balance of power. This is why I always said maintaining the unipolar moment as it was and not allowing the West to weaken itself was a really important thing, because the moment you have a power vacuum, you always have a power struggle. Mexico is a very good example of this. If you look at what's been happening, there's been a gigantic drug war in Mexico for the last 20 years because there are different cartels vying for power. And the moment you take out the leader of one cartel or something happens, there's a bloodbath. Because this is what happens when the central authority, the central power, the current system breaks down. You inevitably end up in a much more violent, much more unstable, much more unpredictable place. And all Trump really is doing is reflecting the reality that has been already there for years, except he's reflecting it in American foreign policy. He's saying, well, look, if Russia is going to do what it wants to do and we can't stop them, and if China is going to do what they want to do and we can't stop them, well, we've got to do what we've got to do, and no one's going to stop us. And that's the world you've ended up in. And by the way, just on the nuclear point, I think it's important to say, you're 100% right. And this is one of the things I've always said about not supporting Ukraine properly, which we haven't done. We have not supported them enough to be able to actually fully repel the aggression from Russia, is it would inevitably lead to lots of other small countries pursuing nuclear weapons, because it is the only guarantee of security in this world. That is a huge danger for the world in terms of nuclear proliferation, because if the precedent is, like you say, the people with nuclear weapons can do what they want and they can never be attacked, and the people with no nuclear weapons are vulnerable and weak, what would be the most rational thing for you to do if you're a smaller country? That's the big danger.
Because you were talking about a unipolar world and a multipolar world, but I wonder if it's going to be, how many nuclear powers are there? There's like 9 or 10? If the world is actually going to split into these 10 nuclear powers, and these 10 nuclear powers can basically do what they want.
Well, nuclear powers are different. I don't see Pakistan likely to be rampaging through its neighbours, not least because they're all nuclear powers themselves. I think you're talking about Russia, China, and the US primarily. I don't see Britain, re-invading France, although that's something obviously I'm in favour of.
If Pakistan decided to take a neighbouring country, though, nobody can really come for them, because economic sanctions.
Having one nuke is not the same as having a gigantic nuclear arsenal. I think Pakistan is relatively constrained in its behaviour, but the big superpowers are not so. By the way, retaking France was a joke. I just